But do you ever watch them, those Mark Bell ones back in the day?
No, go on.
Supertraining.tv. I can't remember. I used to know it because he'd say it at the beginning of every bloody episode, but it was just hilarious. It'd be like, you know, welcome to Supertraining.tv, the strongest gym in the West. This episode is sponsored by, and then it'd be like supertraining.com, the slingshot, and my fat face, or like something stupid. Like, well, they're just all his own companies. Like, he's not sponsored at all. He's just like, and this episode is sponsored by me, myself, and me. It's basically what he's saying every time. And it'd always be going, and always be saying the strongest gym in the West. And he's like, I started saying that just because it pisses off Louis Simmons, because he clearly has a much stronger gym. But when I sit there with thousands of people, go, the strongest gym in the West.
Yeah, we should definitely come up with something like that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're kind of sponsored.
Yeah. Exactly, sponsored by Valhalla.
Yep, that's it. So it took a while to get that brand secured.
Yeah, exactly.
Wasn't easy.
Hard work.
Some tough negotiations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They fought hard, but we finally got them down to $0 and zero.
Zero setup fee, zero base pay, and zero commission.
Excellent.
You got a deal. Some serious negotiation going on.
Yeah. Oh dear.
Cool. Episode number 2.
Mm-hmm.
Today we're going to talk about, I suppose, it's programming, but it's going to be, I suppose, split off season, in season, because your training style and your training requirements are going to be a bit different. And I think it's going to be a really good follow on from our previous podcast. If you haven't seen it, it's about the best exercise for rugby. It could be a little bit of a misleading or a little bit of a clickbaity title, because there isn't going to be one exercise. And having said that, there was a comment by Tobias. Yeah, you're going to have to listen to find out. One good one that Tobias, I can't remember his full name, Tobias PT, that put on Instagram, is he said that he thinks that sprinting would have the most transference to rugby. I thought that's quite an important one to consider.
Yeah, I suppose we were focused on strength exercises rather than conditioning type things. But yeah, obviously speed kills in rugby, but it's we were focused on
absolutely
gym
absolutely
exercises, strength conditioning.
Yeah, we were, and
over conditioning.
And to be honest, how would you get better at sprinting? And you would pick the 2 exercises we suggested or recommended. That would be a way of improving sprinting. You don't just get faster by sprinting. Just kind of sprinting. There's got to be an element of strength training. You've got to increase your ground force, or the force you're applying to the ground. Yeah, they're hardly skinny. So that I thought it was a good recommendation, and hopefully what we talk about today, there'll be further dialogue on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and we can get your thoughts on it as well. But that's the podcast for today. So I guess kind of over to you, Tom, to kind of just give a quick overview of why would the 2 be different? Why would your off-season and in-season be different?
Yeah, a good place to
start. It's a bit obvious, but...
Well, maybe not though. Like the kind of the crux of it is you've got different ambitions at different times of the year. If you're playing rugby or any other sport, you've got different periods of the year where you'll have more or less intensity in your games and the volume of games, or even playing any games at all. Right, in the off season, you're not playing any games, and so therefore you can put more work into the gym because you're not as beaten up from the weekend. And then equally, if you're in the run up to a cup final, you don't want to kill yourself in the gym, because at that point it's too late anyway. You've either done your preparation or you haven't, and you need to be fresh for your game. So the point of any kind of periodization or programming to like balance yourself out from your rugby, the impact that has on your body and your recovery versus your gym work and putting that in. So yeah, there will always be a difference between off season and in season.
Yeah.
But then even
I think
within that, there's periods as well to go through.
Yeah, and that's going to be I suppose the nuance and the technicality and that expertise you're going to bring in. For me, I would just put it down to essentially one simple word that you just used there, which is recovery. Because you've got 2 training sessions and you've got match day, or maybe you've got 1 training session, or even at high level, you have even more training sessions than 2. But most, decent competitive club level, their first 15 will absolutely be training twice a week. So you've got those to account for. You also want to show up and do well at training if you want to keep playing at a high level, and then you've got game day. So that's 3 days a week of 7 that you're already engaged in the physical activity. Can you train those days? Can you not train those days? I think it all comes down to your recovery capabilities.
Yeah, absolutely. This is where distinguishing whether you are a professional player, an amateur player, or you're hoping to be one of those two, and how much commitment you're going to put into this. Because ultimately, you could sit here and you read loads of stuff online. It's like, don't do some heavy squat session and then go and do your rugby training. But on the flip side of that, professional teams are going to be training 14 times a week and playing games. So you can get yourself to a level of conditioning that will allow you to do things like that, but you've just got to get there.
Absolutely. So it's adapting to the stimulus. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
we used to play for the Outcasts at home. You remember Mikey Della? He used to do a chess session on the day of the game. On game day.
Yeah.
And it was like,
I probably wouldn't go that far, but
it's like he's been doing it since like day dot. I don't think he can remember when he hadn't done it. And he was like, it never affected his gameplay. But then he started to find, as he's getting older, that he wasn't recovering from the gym sessions and that he needed to cut it out. But it's fascinating that he had built up that level of recovery and or training capacity that he could actually do a chess session. I suppose your chess is also not the one you're going to need the most in a rugby game. It's probably the one you could forego.
Yeah, it's funny as well. If you see, there's a nice series on the Hurricanes, New Zealand rugby side, and following their pre-season training then into their first couple of games, and shows you their preparation before a game, and they do 3 hours of training before the game. I'm like, I'd be dead at that point. But that's what I mean. Like, if you think about when I worked at a gym, right, I would teach spin classes, like, and you do the lesson. I do that, twice a day. I do Olympic lifting in the morning because I was crap at Olympic lifting, so the weights were not heavy enough to really be strength work, and I do powerlifting in the evening. And but you think about it, and people are like, that's ridiculous. How can you do that? It's like, because I had that level of conditioning. That's how. Like, I didn't do that on the first day. Like, I didn't turn up day one and go, you know what I'm going to do? 4 training sessions today. No, it's that's totally ridiculous. But you can build up to a certain level, which, going full circle back around to our programming, is exactly what the off season is for. Like, I would take that time to not, like, especially depending on where you are with your career and where you're wanting to develop and things like that. But, if you're an international player, you take the first part of the off season to recover from the entire season. If you're not a professional, I would say that's the time to start burying yourself in work, so that the season almost becomes too easy. Right. And you keep using the off season to get to the next level, because it's really difficult in season. If you're playing at a semi-decent level, like, you are going to start getting battered, and you are going to pick up little niggles and injuries and things like that. So to really crush yourself in training and push your conditioning that much further, or especially in strength work, like, I tend to find that suffers the most, especially like once you get to about the Christmas period, from between January and the end of the season, to do any kind of serious heavy lifting and strength work is really difficult, because you've got all of your biggest games coming up. You're already battered from the first half of the season, all that sort of thing. So in that off season, that's where I'd focus on wherever your weak points are. Like, if you need better conditioning, start doing it there. If you need better strength, start doing it there. And then
would you say conditioning? Would you prioritize conditioning? I would prioritize like anything that's rehab related. So if you know that there is a weakness in a given muscle group and it keeps giving way and it's caused you several injuries, then maybe you need to focus on around strengthening what's around that muscle group, or just generally getting your strength numbers up, getting your explosive. So you're getting your raw strength numbers up, converting that to explosive energy. I don't know whether you agree or not, but I are on the side of maybe deprioritize the conditioning aspect. Don't completely get rid of it, but most teams will have a conditioning period just before the start of the season, and conditioning you can catch that up pretty quickly. Probably only
I was
needs
meaning more
a few
like,
sessions a week.
Yeah, it just depends. I totally agree with that. Like, it depends what you need. Like, if you've got some weak areas that you need to bring up, like I kept tearing my hamstring because my quads were way too dominant. So I spent 3 months basically not doing any quad exercises and just doing posterior chain to bring that imbalance back. And then I've not torn my hamstring since. So yes, that would be something to do. But on the flip side of that, you see some guys, and actually their strength is where it needs to be. Like, they can squat 250 kilos. What they can't do is get up and down the field. And so that's what's letting them down. So I would focus on what do you need, because that's going to be the most difficult thing to bring up when you're in season. All of your strengths and the things that you're good at are probably just come naturally to you, and you'll keep progressing them anyway all year.
True.
If I do 2 deadlift sessions a year, I'll probably increase my deadlift. But if I don't touch the bench press for 5 minutes, it goes down dramatically, like cuts in half. I think there's like a half-life of about 6 minutes on my bench press.
Same here. Disappears, just flies away.
So, you've got different abilities, different things you're good at or you're not good at or whatever. So that would be the first thing I would put into, because when you think about programming and how you put it together, obviously you can get stuff online, and we'll talk about some programs and things that you can just download. But I think it's good to establish some sort of principles, because even if you download a program, you might need to adapt it to yourself in some capacity.
Sure, that makes sense.
So I think it's worth thinking about the priorities that you should have at different stages, so that you can make those calls yourself, because they're not too difficult. If you download West Side for Skinny Bastards and you realize, actually, I really do need to pack on some size, and that's what I need to do. Perhaps I should cut down on doing too much running, because I need to keep the calories and I don't need to be as conditioned right now.
Absolutely.
You see that a lot with obviously people playing the backs. They keep themselves relatively lean and doing a lot of conditioning work, a lot of sprinting and things, and they can't put on size during the season because they're just burning so many calories. Especially if that's your natural disposition to do. So in the off season, you could just be like, you know what, I'm going to spend 6 weeks just basically not doing any conditioning work whatsoever. And just you get all the calories back.
That makes sense. So in terms of, that's off season. Prioritize any weaknesses. You're probably going to be more strength focused. Conditioning is probably the one that you could forego, because you can always catch that up towards the beginning of the season very, very quickly. And it's not one that you need to spend too much time focusing on. Like we used to have, and to be honest, you could probably do your conditioning at the end of most workouts, but you wouldn't do your strength workout at the end of a conditioning session. So you wouldn't do conditioning, then go pick up some weights. You'd always prioritize the weights. So you could always do conditioning after your rugby training sessions. And in fact, most of them, at least the ones I used to go to, the way they were structured was like conditioning was involved all throughout the training session. And then at the end, we had a fitness test. Every session.
Do that. And you can keep things up, and you can keep yourself building up your kind of your GPP, or general physical preparedness, is a bit of a funny balance in game, because you can get it. You can keep pushing it up to a level where your GPP is basically so extremely good that, like, how do elite level athletes do what they do? Is because their GPP is elite. They are already,
it's like CrossFitters.
They're just already physically prepared for everything all the time. So I wouldn't let it drop off a cliff too much, but you can certainly cut down, focus on other things, and use that time a bit more strategically, especially if you've not got training or at all. Some teams, completely shut down for a period of time, a couple of months, and you won't have games probably for at least 3 months. And so you can certainly use that time instead of, you're going to burn calories in 80 minutes playing a game, and really that's a conditioning session, isn't it? It's going to burn you out more than any conditioning session. So you could take that Saturday afternoon and say, well, okay, actually what I need to do is work on whatever the weak area is, whether that be balancing something to prevent injuries or just generally building up strength. That's where I would put that into place. But I would go the other way and still say, if you are the opposite end, which is not going to be many people, but some people come from strength sports and then get into rugby, and so they're extremely strong, but their conditioning sucks like hell. And so I would use that time to do conditioning.
Yeah, fair. Again, I'm not saying everyone. There's always going to be outliers and always exemptions to the rules. Okay, so obviously we said recovery, but why can't and why shouldn't you do that in season, or what should be your goal in season?
Probably, I mean,
what do you think?
Depending on what kind of level you're playing at, obviously any professional is basically just saying, I'm trying to maintain my levels of strength during this season, and perhaps build it up in periods where there's a slight quiet place, or depending on how big your squad is, you might have rotations where you're going to have 2 weeks where you're not playing, and so you could do a bit more strength work or whatever. But if you're not a professional, I would say you can still certainly look at building your strength, and depending on where you are on that strength curve as well. If you're a beginner, you absolutely can. But if you've been training a while, and I would just say it's going to slow, and you just need to be less aggressive with it, and you need to be okay with the fact that some weeks you're not going to be able to do or hit numbers that you think you can or would want to do. So about being intelligent around that, I think. But you can probably, you should at least maintain where you're at, unless you obviously pick up a serious injury. And then I would be looking to make small improvements, unless you're a professional or semi-professional, and then you're going to want to probably only look at maintaining stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so I would say, or I would add to that, obviously recovery will be a huge element, and I would say your training sessions, whilst they should always have an element of mobility in them, something from Jim Wendler says if a training session doesn't have a strength component, a mobility component, and a conditioning component, it's probably useless. And I think that's true. If your training throughout the week does not have any element of it relating to some mobility work, whether that's go foam roll, go get a lacrosse ball, sit on that, go get one of those, what's it called, the gun that just absolutely hammers into you. I can't remember, it's like a therapeutic gun. If that's like 10 minutes on that, like that should be part of your in-season training, because the most important thing to do is be ready for game day, and maximizing your training sessions. What do you think should happen around intensity? Because I think, or my thought on this is, off season, you can probably go hard on most exercises for most sets, for most reps. Whereas as it comes to in season, you've got to treat it a bit like a bodybuilder treats, like getting ready for stage and going into like a cut, where they will try and keep the intensity up, but they will drop the volume. So instead of doing, 4 or 5 sets of 8 reps of, as much as they could possibly lift, they'll probably do 2 hard working sets, and so a couple of feeders, 2 hard working sets, or even 1 hard working set, trying to maintain that absolute level of strength. Is that how you would recommend it, or would you say, or is there an alternative method to even that?
Yeah, I mean, you could certainly do it that way, and I think it's going to depend a little bit on the individual. From some of the stuff that we were saying last week, and just some things I've tested out with myself and seen that other people have done, and it's a very small section, there's not a huge amount on it, but I would do it based on my mentality more than anything else. So although I might build up to a 1 rep max in the off season, I would be getting amped up, fired up, sniffing ammonia, shouting, listening to music, and being aggressive about it. And lift 102% of your max. Whereas in season, especially if I'm getting towards any kind of serious thing, I'll still do what is a 1 rep max for that day and can't possibly lift more, but I didn't amp myself up in any way, and I was calm. I probably didn't listen to music at all, and you're just like totally like zen about the whole thing, and it's just like, oh, I didn't lift it today, it's okay, or I only got to this level today, and use that as an intensity measure.
Sure.
rather than going, well, normally I would do 105 kilos on this exercise, and today I'm only going to do 100, and so taking off, a little bit. I think you can self-manage that with your mindset, and it's also stressful, because if I get myself amped up to push myself for me anyway, like if I went really crazy about getting amped up for even just 2 sets, mentally it's stressful. So I'd rather do 4 sets of 8 and not get myself amped up than to do 2 sets of 8 getting amped up.
Yeah.
I would find it less tiring, even though it was more work. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to look after your CNS as well. If you're constantly amping yourself up, constantly listening to hardcore music, that is, in a way, that will take a toll on your CNS. Some people thrive on it. So I guess it like you said, it's kind of down to your personality. If you give someone who doesn't thrive on that, trains to their best when they're calm, then amping them up, they'll probably burn out really quickly. But equally, you get some people who love that kind of they love that kind of hardcore environment or belief, and they need that this is going to be hard, it's going to be heavy, it's going to be brutal, and then they kind of get themselves going that way.
Yeah, some people just don't like. I don't mind turning up to the gym and putting in the work, being calm about the whole thing. I don't find it less entertaining or interesting. I still like lifting the weights. It's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, some people want that like atmosphere, and in which case I would take the approach of, right, okay, you're going to have to do something to limit the intensity.
Yeah.
At some stage, because otherwise you're going to start breaking yourself down, especially if you are doing a lot of training.
Yeah.
Go that way. Like if you see Martins Lisis, who was the world's strongest man last year, when he trains, like it's interesting to see his training, because he's just like zen as hell 99% of the time. And then when he's like about 8 weeks out from a competition, maybe 10 weeks or something like that, you just see the intensity of his training go up, but less from a standpoint of like the numbers on the thing, more of a mentality.
Okay.
He starts actually then maybe getting a bit pumped up about stuff.
Yeah.
But if you see Brian Shaw, he's like pumped up about every set in every session all of the time. And then he moderates intensity with volume and percentages.
Okay. That kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
There's
approaches.
Someone I follow on Instagram, squat like it's Ben Chow, but I think his tag is at squat like Chow. And he was saying he was doing a video for Redcon, it's one of the brands. And he was going through his workout, and this guy can squat 8 plates for double treble quite easily. I mean, also, it takes a toll, but relatively speaking, quite easily. He gets to 6 plates, no problem. And so he's doing like 6 plates or 7 plates or something, and then someone he's not supposed to be doing 8 plates, but someone puts 8 on and kind of gives him a nudge, and they'll try and kind of peer pressure him into it, and he goes, all right, we're shooting, so why not? So he kind of gets there, puts his hands on the bar or something, and then as he's like getting underneath, I think someone like slaps it, or someone starts shouting, "Come on, let's go," like really yelling. And he just completely like, let's go. The bar walks out and goes, "Don't do that." He doesn't like it. He's like that absolute zen, calm guy. He gets under 6 plates, so that's 6 20s either side. So he's getting under 240, 260 kilos. And he's like, in my gym, he's got his own gym in Texas or somewhere, and he's like, I could be listening to Christina Aguilera, and I'll happily squat to 260 kilos for several reps. But he's just not one of those that gets amped up. Whereas I know other people that kind of, like you said, they kind of sniff the sniffing salts, they kind of get themselves going, they focus, they almost they almost kind of think of like a tragic situation that if they don't do this, that tragic situation will occur, and so they really put themselves in a dark place to lift and kind of tap everything. Some people just don't like it, don't thrive off it. Their form falls or their strength falls. So it's interesting you say that.
I don't know, I just like it as there's lots of research around people being able to use RPE, like rate of perceived exertion.
That's it.
And as long as you've got around about, I can't remember exactly what the stats were, but it was something like a year's worth of training. It wasn't that long, maybe 2 years. Most people were incredibly accurate with it, like, because you understand what you can do and what you can't do. And so I quite like having that kind of some sort of level self like monitoring in there, rather than a totally prescribed, this is how many sets and reps and percentages that you should do. But some people just don't like it. Like they're not very good at telling themselves to push harder, or so they just never do, and they never make any progress. And so it'd be better that it's written down today. You must push yourself. You know, and I think that's about knowing yourself. And again, going back to what we were saying at the beginning, like picking a training program and you might have to change it. Your program might say something like self-moderate this as an RPE of 8, and you know you're not going to be able to do that. And in which case, put some percentages in there. Know that you must lift 80% of your 1 rep max, kind of regardless of how you're feeling, because you know that's how you'll get there. Type of thing. So, or pick a different program. Because they all generally work. I mean, we'll go through a few
for sure.
on different things, but it is an interesting one. I think a lot of people end up in one camp or the other, where they're like, no, you must monitor everything, record it all and write it down. And then everybody else is like, no, you must feel everything, and the way of the warrior is the only way.
Something you're not hardcore enough. If you have to write everything down, you're just not committed enough. That if you were committed, you'll remember what you lifted. What?
Yeah.
Every exercise, every rep, every set, 5-day split. No. Absolutely.
I bet Louis Simon's good. That guy is like a monster when it comes to remembering stats and statistics.
Is he? Yeah.
Yeah, he's just.
I'm definitely not.
I can always remember. I can't always remember, but I can often remember the numbers roughly that I have done before. I'm quite good with remembering numbers, and terrible at remembering almost everything else.
No, but like some days I might do 7 or 8 sets on leg extensions.
Yeah.
I'm not remembering all of them.
No.
Especially when it's like some machines, they're like in kilos. You go to some machines in pure gym, I think they're in pounds.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, why we're in England? This is not America.
What are you doing?
Stop it.
Not in the Stone Age.
Yeah.
You see, I like Mark Bell does that a lot. He's a bit more intuitive type lifter, you might say.
Yeah.
And he's always getting questions from people who are way more stats based. And they're like, how many? You see it sometimes in videos where he does like a collaboration with somebody who is quite like, strict about stuff. And they'll be like, okay, so how many do you do on that set? And he's like, I don't know, some for a few. Like, what do you mean? Some for? What are you talking about? He's like, I picked something that felt relatively heavy that I could do for a few reps, like clearly more than 3. I don't know.
Some for a few.
And he's like, well, I mean, for him, he's like a power lifter, so anything more than 3 is cardio for a start. It's like, it's not like, it's not that important. Is it like, I know I've done more than 3 reps, and I know I've not done 25. So I'm in the ballpark of hypertrophy. Well, you can go that way. I certainly think you can. I mean, he's achieved great things with his powerlifting.
Absolutely.
Very strong man. And so you can win both ways. I think you just have to know yourself and what you can do, can't do, what you want to do, how are you going to react to things. Yourself. Like for me, I get excited. I know I don't really need some thing to tell me I have to lift 102% of my 1 rep max today, because if I feel like I can, I'm going for it, even if I'm not supposed to be, because I get excited about it. Like I want to lift that weight if I can, and equally, if I know it's not in me today, I don't really care about walking away and it's not there today. Doesn't I don't lose my mind about it. But
you save the PR for another day. No, I get that. I get the concept of just feeling it. I think it's also what you get introduced to. Absolutely. There's an element there's definitely that's a big factor. I think it was also kind of what you're introduced to as well. So when we first started lifting, we were following 5-3-1, or we were for the main lift, and then we were kind of just going on and doing 2-3 other different types of training regimes, or we'll finish with FTS 7 on something at the end. It's like, I'm not sure this is like hybriding of about 4 different programs.
I mean, I still do that to this day. Like I was saying this last week, wasn't we? Like I think it's worth trying out all these different things, because you just don't know. Like when I've done this recovery, I wish I could go back to I'm going to start doing a roads to 200 kilos or something like that, I think, and start again. And I'm basically back at scratch now. for anybody who doesn't realize, I've had multiple back problems. I've slipped 2 discs, and so my numbers are like back down to 0 basically. I might as well be where I started. And but when I started doing recovery last year in December, the 4 months before the gyms closed, and I'd done that squat every day, like go in and lift a 1 rep max every day, I'd have made better progress. I felt amazing as well. Like, wow, really, really good. Which is like, everybody's like, you can't possibly lift a 1 rep max every day, you'll die. And maybe if I'd done it for 6 months, I would be dead. And so, you know, it is possible. But I just feel like if I've already hurt myself this much so many times doing everything you're supposed to be doing, let's try something that I'm not supposed to be doing.
Why not? What could possibly happen? Yeah, fair.
And so I done that. I moderated it with, I wasn't going ballistic. Like I wouldn't listen to music, and I was pretty peaceful. So the 1 rep max, I mean, realistically, I probably had, you know, an extra 5% in the tank in every lift.
Yeah.
If you're getting proper ramped up. And another way I was moderating the amount of weight, because the amount of weight that you're moving will actually make a difference. Like a back squat to a front squat, you're going to drop a certain percentage of the actual physical weight on the bar, which will change how you recover and how stressful it is for your body. So I'm doing back squats and powerlifting. So a good way to moderate that was either change to a front squat and do a 1 rep max with front squat, or take a belt off and just don't lift with a belt that day.
Okay.
You don't have knee wraps, or put them all on, and then the next day don't. And so you can moderate the intensity like that. Even though I'm lifting on 1 rep max pretty calmly, you know, if one day I'm doing it as a back squat with a belt and knee wraps, and the next day I'm doing a front squat with no belt, no wraps, weight on the bar is wildly different.
Yeah, it's going to be. Yeah, for sure.
So you can rotate things that way as well. But anyway, I just thought it was interesting. Like, I really want to be able to do that again. But none of the gyms are open here now. So.
Oh, you've gone back into lockdown?
Yeah, all the sports places are closed. I think we've got the same as you, like where it's all limit of 6 people to a room, or whatever it is. If you've got an outdoor space as a sports place, you can
be open. Okay.
Yeah, you can be open.
Have you got like a rag tiered status? We've got that. We've got 3 tiers.
Medium. No, we don't.
High, very high. Okay. If you're in the very high, I think you're in full lockdown. But there seems to be some noise coming through that even in the very high tier, so tier 3, gyms may still be allowed to be open because there's an element of mental health that they've been factored in, and obviously gyms are petitioning back. I don't know whether that's been agreed yet or not. As of today, but I read something or saw something somewhere that's something that's being considered.
I saw online, being able to go into a restaurant and having to wear a mask and walk into a restaurant and being allowed to take it off is the equivalent of having a pissing section in a swimming pool. Like, that's so true. Like, what is that doing? I wear my mask when I walk in, but as soon as I sit down, I can take it off and breathe in everything anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
What is the point?
It's to reduce the velocity of it, and it's like, well, no.
Yeah, I'm like, I would much like, for me, surely, like, because I think you should wear a mask. Like, I think that is important. I think you shouldn't wear one, but I don't see how going to a gym and wearing the mask 100% of the time is worse than going to a restaurant where you wear it less than 10% of the time.
Yeah.
Because I spend 90% of the time sitting down and eating in a restaurant, and only 10% of the time walking from the door to the table and to the toilet and back.
Where the mask needs to be on, yeah.
So, anyway, we digress.
Yeah. One bit we didn't touch on is so we spoke about off season and in season strength training and how to kind of really essentially manage it, and we give quite a few tips. One thing we didn't look at is, well, what about the speedsters? What about your wingers? Maybe your backline in general, but those guys that, especially your wingers and your fullback, that absolutely rely on speed and need to do speed work. How should they be treating that? Should that just be a tag along at the end of the session? My personal thought is it needs to be its own dedicated day where you allocate it to sprint work, and you should take it to levels of intensity where you do need to recover from it. So you shouldn't be able to do speed work every day. Otherwise, I don't think that's speed work.
Yeah, you could do. I think you could do that if you were. I'm certainly not sprint coach by any means. I'll just caveat that now. But
Yeah. Well,
I
neither
think,
of us are.
yeah, I think you can. I would just put it where somebody might have like 5 or 6 sets of something because they're
Yeah.
trying to just ultimately build strength. You might do 3 or 4 sets and then add in a plyometric set or something like that. A few plyometric things at the end, or you might do some speed work. We might do
Interesting. I would have
more
put plyometric stuff at the beginning.
Yeah, you might do
Yeah, not at the end of a session.
Yeah, you might do it at the beginning. What I mean is like the structure. Like instead of doing 6 sets of bench press, you do 3 sets of dynamic stuff first, and then you do.
Okay. Yeah.
You move into strength. So although you've done 6 sets, you didn't do 6 sets of strength work. You split it up. Whereas your prop only done 6 sets of a regular bench press and trying to make it heavy.
Yeah. Fair.
Is what I mean. But yeah, I think you should certainly program it in. Again, going back to what we were saying, like priorities. What are your priorities? Right, I would write them down so you've got them. What do I need to improve? And speed is obviously going to be a component for it. And then I think you've got to think about very seriously: is my speed lacking because I'm not a good sprinter, or is it lacking because I'm weak as hell?
Yeah, I'm not strong enough. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's almost, if you're aged like 13 to 22, it's almost certainly because you're weak as hell.
Yeah.
Like it's surprising how much quicker you can get when your posterior chain is rock solid, like really strong. Your speed will increase as long as you've not taken on too much weight in terms of fat. So you can utilize that in a more explosive manner, and you could do explosive stuff. But yeah, you could do. I think you could do speed drills. Like I would, like you're saying, like have a dedicated speed day would be good, but you could do speed stuff and just a couple of drills, fast feet work and things like that to keep explosive, and you could keep them at the end of the session. Do a little the ladder things, doing footwork, doing over the hurdles to keep your knees high and stuff like that, going through the motions, doing bounding work, things like that. Not huge high impact sprint session, but it's a component of sprint sessions, and you put them in at the end of all your strength stuff.
Yeah, I guess if you're breaking an entire sprint session down to 6 exercises or something, or 6 drills, and then you're scattering those throughout your work week, your training week, that works. But yeah, I'd absolutely again put those at the start of the training session and not at the end when you're fatigued, because the whole point is.
Depends what it is. I think a plyometric thing with weight, I would put potentially big, and it would also depend on your goals as well, because if you do a bunch of plyometric stuff that was quite intense, it's going to have a negative effect on your speed weight. If you're just doing fast feet and you're just trying to keep that movement and keep trying to be quick, I think you could do that after your strength work to not take away from the fact that that's the priority. Like I need to get stronger first, and then I'm kind of working on and you're kind of using the sprint stuff at the end to not get too far away from where you were.
Yeah, I guess, but then you could just say if you want to prioritize strength work, but you need to keep speed work in there, still do the speed work first, because ultimately you need to activate. You don't want to have fatigued muscle when you're trying to develop speed, is my opinion. Just my thought on the subject. But then don't bury yourself. Still do it first, but just don't bury yourself in it. But that's kind of logic to us all, which is like, if you're going to go do bench press, that's fine, maybe, and it's your first exercise, let's say, and you're trying to build some chest strength or chest size as well. You just want to ultimately a bigger, stronger chest. Your first exercise probably shouldn't be 5 sets all to failure with a drop set, some negatives, and supersetting that with press ups or something, because you still got 4 exercises that you need to go out and train.
I think that sounds wonderful.
No. They'd probably keep that as a regular set, but yeah, I just think, okay, if speed is a priority, I think that's quite an interesting idea. I never thought about doing a little bit. I was doing a little bit as conditioning at the end, so like the ladder work, but I was just doing a bit of ladders and then like kettlebell swings, climate, like one-arm push, but I was doing that more from a conditioning aspect. I was just trying to create a little circuit just to kind of keep my conditioning. I was trying to loosen fat. But my priority there wasn't to try and get faster. I wasn't chasing speed. I wasn't training for rugby specifically at that point either. So
well, certainly you can build it in there.
Yeah,
interesting. And one thing to know, we mentioned a little bit about beginners and then people who are not. I would say, 90% of this, like having priorities and things like all these types of stuff, is really applicable for somebody who's been training for a year or more. If you haven't, I would probably almost certainly, firstly, obviously establish your goals and what you're going to do.
Yeah.
But I'd probably stay fairly rigidly into a program. Like pick one and just follow it for a year, or pick three and follow them for 4 months each, whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Just to, because you're going to have no idea and it's going to be too difficult to make your own choices. And even if you do pick the worst program ever, if you've never trained before, you're still going to make ridiculous progress anyway, and it's not going to matter. Like,
if you're absolutely completely new to weight training, then just keep strength as your focus. In fact, don't worry about speed dynamic work. Don't worry about what kind of split do I need to do, or trying to like the finer details. Like you don't need to get the scalpel out at the moment. You need to just stick to putting the meat on the bones. And just,
I think if you could probably pick some arbitrary numbers of like, if you can't deadlift 150 kilos and squat 150 kilos and bench press 80, 90, 100 kilos, your own body weight.
Yeah.
Bench press your own body weight and you can't deadlift and squat 1.5 times, 2 times your body weight.
Yeah.
Is on that. Like get
from a bare minimum 1.5. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Like something around that kind of ballpark. I know they're like ridiculously arbitrary numbers, but it's just like, if you don't have a foundation of strength to some capacity, like just regular barbell movements, you don't need to be crazy about anything.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, you don't need band work. You don't need.
You do need chains though, because they're cool.
You do need chains because they're cool.
Where's it not in the chain gang?
Yeah.
There's no way of making progress without chains.
No, none whatsoever.
That's what my wife says.
What? Cool. So we've covered off season. We've covered in season training. We've kind of covered where and how to maybe put in some potential speed work, what to manage recovery wise. So we've covered quite a bit. Let's briefly, and we'll probably go more in depth in the next one. But let's just briefly discuss some of the common training programs that are out there. We don't need to, not their pros and cons, but just to kind of give a bit of information. So if you're listening to this podcast and you are the new to training, what programs should you go out and listen to? Like someone said, there are crappy ones out there that aren't programmed very well. And there is such a thing as bad programming. And I'll give you just a classic example. Just bad programming. Someone will say, oh, here's a leg session, and it will be go do some squats, then go do some leg press, then maybe do some extensions as in leg extensions, and then go do lunges. That's your leg day. Maybe some calf raises as well thrown in. You've ignored the hamstrings or any direct ham work there at all. There's no IDLs, there's no ham curls, there's no Nordic curls. Then you're going to get super nerdy, and Nordic ham curls is it's working your hamstrings just like an IDL is, but it does it in such a different fashion that people that often have, like yourself, who actually often injure their hamstrings, it's not because they might have incredibly good IDL ability, but they're probably rubbish at Nordic ham curls or those glute ham raises, because that's a different form of strength. And then that training itself could stop you or prevent you from having injuries in your hamstrings, but that's not programmed in, the program that I just said, there was no direct ham work.
You should do hamstring work as a hip flexion exercise and a knee flexion exercise. You should have both in there.
Yeah.
Otherwise you're going to miss something.
And so this is why I think it's really important to understand that there is bad programming. And not that bad programming won't get you results, but it might leave imbalances and vulnerabilities within your physique, your strength output, the kinetic chain that could cause injury down the line, and then you'll have to work extra to overdo it. It's not going to be like horrendously bad, but there is such a thing as bad programming, and that's why it's probably best to stick to the people that have got time-tested training programs, and we'll probably go through just a few of those now. But that's because they've refined their art over decades and across tens and thousands of athletes, and they've improved their program. They started from a basic program, they learned, they adjusted, they learned, they adjusted, and they've now got it to a position where it kind of works for a lot of people. And they've very, very, very broad range of people can get a lot of results, and that's where they've got it to. So it's probably best to start with those where the odds are more in your favor that it will work for you as a program. So do you want to take it in turns listing one out, or do you just want to list a few and then we can just briefly cover the structure of those programs, but we'll go into more depth maybe in another video?
I think a good one to, if you've never done any training whatsoever before,
you're
pretty, you're new to anything, there are a couple that immediately spring to mind, so we'll probably start there and then we can go into more advanced stuff. And the first thing I done was just linear periodization, which I would never do for somebody who's actually an experienced lifter, but I think for a beginner it's actually a really sensible place to start. Just like either a full body or at least a kind of split where you're not just hammering, like you're not just doing chest because it's just stupid. Like at least do push and pull, like upper lower. That would be fine. Be okay. But if not, do full body. And then starting with, so linear periodization is just literally every week you're increasing the weight and doing less reps. So, or it might be every 2 weeks or something. There's a few different types of programs, but if it's a 12-week type of thing, you might be, week 1, you're doing 3 sets of 10 reps. And then week 2, you're doing 3 sets of 8 reps, but the weight has gone up. Every week you train, and you're, by the end of it, you're going to do a 1 rep max, and then you're going to cycle back round again. You're going to take and it's all based on percentages. So pre-week 1, you're going to test, like, what can I bench press?
Where am I?
Where am I? And then based off of that, it's just percentages with the weight increasing every week and the reps going down. But it's a nice way to start, because it's very easy to, like, okay, I know what I'm going to do. I can work it all out. I don't have to think about very much. I'm going to make progress. Like, you've got to think about recovery as much as anything, and then progress, like continuously progressing and putting new stimulus in your body. Like, stimulus and recovery are the only 2 things you need to think about in any program. Like, how am I going to use stimulus and how am I going to recover from it? Because that stimulus response is the only way you grow or get better. But with a just direct linear periodization as a total beginner that's done nothing before, I think it's a nice place to start, because it just gives you so much easy structure to follow.
You'll recover from anything and everything.
You want to think about it as well, and you'll get confident. And when that first week, when you're trying to do a squat, it will look horrible, and so you probably don't want to be doing a 1 rep max anyway. Like, you can't really, if you haven't got the form down very well and you're kind of figuring it out, you don't want to be walking out of ridiculously something that might hurt you. But 10 rep anything is not going to hurt you unless you've got a horrible form. But if you're within the regions.
I just think if you're that new, your body just isn't going to be in there. So there is something where your body will just not let you lift anywhere near your actual true maximum, because it's never been there. So your true maximum might actually be today. Let's say you're completely new to the gym, you've never done it, you weigh 60 kilos, your true maximum squat might actually be 80 kilos. But you get the bar, that's 20 kilos, you might put a 10 either side, so that's 40 kilos, and you might find that's that was impossible to get out and you would really, really struggle. That's because your body is already put in the set point. As you improve, not only does your form and technique improve, but your body starts to release the gates and allows you to tap into your actual true rep max ability, 1 rep max or near rep max strength, because it's a bit more comfortable letting you get there. Otherwise, it's like I suppose what do you call it, like a safety net or a fail safe. It's not going to let you lift too heavy where you might injure yourself.
A little bit. I mean, it's a nice way to put it. It's just recruitment of motor neurons. Like, you're just not good at it. You haven't got the pattern down. Like, the firing sequence is not in order, and so while you might fire them all, they're all out of sequence, and so you don't produce maximum strength. Rather than going like in one line, and you can produce your maximum force. When you've not tried to do that before, they just fire at spontaneous times, and they're not very good at it, and they're really inefficient.
They're not coordinated.
And so 90% of what you do in that first 12 weeks will be coordination of motor neurons. So but that's why I like the kind of linear periodization. You're not going to be thinking about it. You can go in, you can make progress, it'll feel good, rather than trying to work out constantly like new maxes and how do I get, well, what did I do last week? I better adjust that. And because it kind of really doesn't matter. You weren't lifting what your maximum was anyway. You just need to get better. You just need to keep squatting so you can get better at squatting, and then you can start building strength in your squat.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes sense. So any programs that people could look up, Google, and find where?
Literally just type in linear periodization program. I know there'll probably be about 1,000 online.
Okay.
Almost any of them will be fine. I would pick one that has got somebody reputable endorsing it, like anybody who's relatively famous in any strength field will be fine.
Can you recommend anyone who would you be looking out for? Obviously, you mentioned Louis Simmons earlier.
Louis Simmons will just immediately put you into Westside Barbell, and I just don't think that's a good place to start.
That's not. No, I agree. So Mark Rippetoe's starting strength.
Yeah, look, Hafo Bjornsson has got a program out, which is
okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I've looked at it. It's like $29 or something. It's not expensive.
Yeah,
and it's literally just pure linear periodization in an upper lower body split. It's like 4 sessions a week, 2 upper, 2 lower.
Yeah,
and it's just straight linear periodization. And I think I'm relatively confident he's done basically that his entire career. Like he's never been able to from it, and he's the strongest man. So I mean, you can certainly take it very far. I can
do, but then you need to be Hathor.
Yeah, I personally don't recommend it for high-level athletes. I don't think it's a good.
No, fair.
There are people that have made it work for sure.
Yeah,
but I think it's a good place to start.
Sure.
Just download that. Like that, it's going to be balanced enough. He's got a couple of versions out for people with equipment, people without equipment.
Yeah. I suppose maybe a bit of a soft spot just because we trained on it, and it's one that I did make my initial not just newbie gains, but my early intermediary gains. Because we did it for quite some time. But 531, Jim Wendler's 531 was just a fantastic, and that you can go online, and it's because it's so popular, it's free. Like Jim Wendler just gives information out for free. But again, if you've never heard of Jim Wendler,
starting strength
5x5, it's that's free. And you can get lots of detail in it, not just it's 5-3-1, I have to lift 5 reps, 3 reps, 1 rep. I do 5-5-5 1 week, 3-3-3, and then 5-3-1. Online there's very in-depth articles on how it's structured, why it's structured that way, what to do, how to warm yourself up for the workouts, all free, because he's moved on. It's been around so long, it's been tried and tested, and he's moved on to boring but big and 5-3-1 forever. He's got a few other programs that obviously it's right to pay him for his time. Obviously, if you want to get the book, go ahead, get the book, but that information is free. So if you're 16, 18, 20 years old, haven't yet stepped in the gym, that's where I would point you to. I'd go 5-3-1, or like I said, 5x5.
I like 5-3-1. That's immediately what I'd move to. Like I would do linear periodization once, move into 5-3-1.
Yeah.
Or you could do starting strength and then move into 5-3-1.
5-3-1.
I think it's a really nice program. I think it works well for. Interesting, keeping in and kind of understanding how to progress each week and making changes that keep that stimulus coming. And I think it teaches you well, like what I think that I could do now just by myself, where I can walk into the gym and kind of manipulate, okay, today I'm going to wear a belt, today I'm not, this time I'm going to use that exercise or do this, and just kind of do it on the fly and do it based on how I feel, because I've had years of like programming that forced you to do that. So you learn how to do that. And something like 5-3-1 will teach you how to push yourself, how to move, how to adjust weights, how to change things, work on different percentages, and how that feels. Like going in and doing a 1 rep max and going in and doing a 5 rep max feels different the next day and the day after. Different at the time. You'll be better at different ones. I'm certainly like all those like calculators where they're like, what's your 5 rep max? This is your 1 rep max. It's never right for me. If they do it off a 3 or a 2, it'll be pretty close. But my 5 rep max would be horrible in comparison to my 1.
Okay. It's too far away.
It just doesn't really translate very well for me. And as opposite you, Carl's the exact opposite, where he'll do like a 5 rep max and like I don't know, bench press 150 kilos for 5 reps, and you're like, okay, your 1 rep max should be 190 kilos, and you can do like 155 as a 1 rep max. You're like,
that's ridiculous.
what's wrong with you?
Wow. So
Yeah,
his strength curves like this.
yeah, bit of an extreme. Well, he never does 1 rep max stuff. I think
Yeah.
The problem.
He's not trained in that. Yeah, fine. Okay.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. So you will learn how you are in different rep ranges and how you can judge yourself. Like that.
Yeah. The one thing I really like about 531 is if you read some of Wendell's articles, some of the ones that really go in depth, he talks about the ancillary or accessory exercises all being about either improving that lift throughout or finding where you're weak in that lift, where is that weakness in the chain, and working that. And so your accessories are designed to improve that very lift so you get stronger, faster. That's not something I think we did when we kind of just moved on to just training that body part because we're in a 5-day split. But if you follow 531, which I did for a little while, afterwards, if you follow it in its truest sense, if you're going to do that as a beginner, your numbers will climb fast. I think that's just brilliant. The way he breaks down, okay, if you're deadlifting and it's not coming off the floor, then your quads are weak. But if you're lifting it off the floor and you're getting it past mid shin, but then you're getting stuck, then it's a sign that your lower back posterior chain and your hips are weak and your glutes aren't firing. So go work them, work your posterior chain. And he gives you exercises to do that. And he does it for all of them, for bench, for deadlift, for military press.
It's all, I mean, I'm sure, I was going to say it's all from Louis Simmons, but I'm sure there's probably like 1,000 other people who've done it 1,000 times before. But a lot of what Westside Barbell is based off of is that, like, finding your weaknesses and then hammering the hell out of them, and then making them into your strengths, and then finding your new weakness. Your next one. You know, there's a lot around, because a lot of Westside Barbell, I think it's like, I mean, firstly, I've made a lot of progress on that program, and I highly recommend it. But I would recommend getting his book. Like, there are free stuff online about Westside Barbell, but I think you miss the point if you don't buy the book. But when you read through it and you realize, actually, everybody talks about having a 1 rep max day and a dynamic effort day, but that makes up like 5% of his overall program. Like, it's really not about that at all. For one, his athletes have 14 specialist exercise sessions per week. His 1 rep max deadlift is meaningless when he's
1 of 14.
Type of thing. It's you know, I remember Marbell talking about it as well, and people were saying about like how much work those guys put in. He's like, people cry now that you say, oh, you've got to do, you know, a set of triceps after you've done your bench work, and people are, oh god, that's crazy. And he's like, when you got to Westside Barbell, to get in the door and start your workout, you had to do like 100 tricep push downs, 100 sets of reps on some sort of lat exercise, and drag the sled up and down the car park a billion times before you're even allowed to go and do your training session.
Really?
Like, that's your entry fee. Like,
it's your entry fee.
Yeah, it's like you have to do triceps, lats, and some sort of sled thing every single day that you're there. You just have to do it every day. It's like a warm up now. Like, it's just
okay.
And you know, this kind of stuff is all detailed in his book. And he details out like finding somebody's weak spot and then really aggressively going at it. So it's like you're using that 1 rep max thing to find your weak spot, not to really grow and make progress with. I'm finding where I'm breaking down.
Absolutely.
Everything else that I'm doing is about building.
Absolutely. If I gave you your 60%, your 1 rep max, you know, which is kind of near about your early working set, which RPE of 6, so you've got plenty left in the tank, you'd probably do that with near perfect form for several reps. Whereas, you know, it will take you quite a lot of reps before you start it, and it might be your conditioning gives in before your form does or your strength does. Whereas, like you said, getting towards your 95, you know, your 90, 95, near 100% effort, your conditioning is not going to let you down, because you're probably going to do 1 or 2 reps, but you will find out where you fail or where you're weak. You know, are you going down and getting stuck in the hole and really grinding it and then sprinting out, or are you getting out the hole but then getting stuck midway? It's very clever.
It's really about that. And you can like again, I'll go back to like doing a 5 rep max. When you start to fail on a 5 rep max, you might not be failing in the same way of your breakdown of form as you would in a 1 rep max. In fact, almost certainly not, because by the time you've got to that 5th rep, you're especially in something like a squat, like you're going to be breathing, you're not going to be braced in any way near the same thing. So you might be breaking down in something that looks like something to do with your torso not being upright. Perhaps you need more upper back work because you like rounding over.
Sure.
But realistically, that's just you're not conditioned enough and you can't breathe. And in a 1 rep max, you get stuck in the hole every time. So you've just spent 12 weeks working on your upper back when really you should have been working on your glutes or your quads.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like makes sense. There's lots of reasons to get up into those maximum weights to then inform the rest of everything else that you're doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, and
it's very clever.
I mean 531 a trained at Westside. I'm pretty certain he did.
Jim Wendler did?
Yeah, I'm fairly certain he did.
I've not read anywhere that he has, but he might well have done. Obviously, it's a very small,
it's very
small world. Yeah, they all kind of obviously work together and relate with each other. Yeah.
But,
if he hasn't, I'm sure if he didn't by the time he created 521, he most certainly has trained with them now.
But
they're all in America.
They've both got relatively similar. Like you're doing that 531, that's obviously a big part of it, but realistically, it's about building everything else.
Absolutely.
There.
Yeah.
Right. You don't just punch a. Like just clock in. Yeah. Well, I'll just do my other sets. It will be fine. I'll go home. It's like no.
It's
an important element.
So we're saying if you're completely new to the gym, it's linear periodization, and then if you've kind of been around the scene for a few months to maybe even up to a year or more, you're probably looking at 531 or a 5x5 starting strength.
You could start there as well. I think you could start with 531 or 5x5 and start there having never trained before. Definitely. I think you I just liked.
That's what we did.
Yeah, and I just like.
But I had your watchful eye keeping an eye on my form, my technique, and teaching me exactly what I needed to do. But if someone's going there completely alone,
I just like you spending a few weeks of lifting way more than 5 reps, because then you've never got anything that's too dangerous on your back.
Yeah, agree. Yeah, it makes sense.
And just
it does.
Grooving the form. Like if you're going to do 3 sets of 1 reps, you've moved the bar up and down 3 times. Whereas if you do 3 sets of 10, you've got 30 reps in the tank. Like you practice the movement 30 times. And at that very beginning phase, you're not getting stronger, you're getting better at the exercise. Your skill is rubbish, not your strength. You're not doing anything with strength. So that's why I like start there, because you're just going to do high rep stuff and a lot of and it'll be worth it just to practice the form.
Makes sense.
Okay. Into the others. Yeah.
So then moving into obviously 531, you've got starting strength 5x5. So they're probably kind of the two that are very well known in this space.
Yep.
After that, what do you recommend? Someone that's maybe done it a year or two, has got that kind of training know-how. That if you went to the gym with them, they know what to do. They know what the exercises are. They know how to set it up. They've got all the right cues, and then they're doing it safely. And they've built up some time some time under the bar. So what would you recommend them? Assuming they stop working. If they're still working, absolutely carry on.
Yeah, I think you can do any of those forever. Like if you really wanted to. You can absolutely just do 531 forever and never change it ever.
Yeah.
The thing that I would recommend implementing is probably getting some sort of coaching. Like I would get somebody to help you, because realistically, some sort of template is now not going to be the thing that determines whether you're going to make progress or not. Your ability to work out what you need personally is.
Yeah.
So either you can work it out, and that's fine. Like listen to stuff like this, all of the stuff that we were saying at the beginning now needs to come into play, and what you're going to do with that. How are you going to build this? What are my weaknesses? Where am I going to look? How am I going to change different aspects of these templated programs for me, or get somebody to help you do that? Because I think it becomes impossible to have a templated thing that just progresses you forever. At some point, that template needs to be adapted to you. Like if you look at Westside Barbell, every single one of those guys is doing a different program. None of them do the same thing. because that's the whole point. Like they're all elite level athletes, and if all of them were doing the same thing, it wouldn't work for all of them.
Sure.
So, you know, this where these specialist exercises come in. And it's like, well, how do I choose my specialist exercise? Well, it depends on your weaknesses. Well, how do I know what my weaknesses are? Well, you record yourself with a video and watch it and listen to things like this and work it out, or you get a coach to just tell you. And I would ask them, just make sure you ask them questions. If they say, okay, well, you're weak in your triceps, okay, how did you know that? Because then next time you can watch your own video.
Work it out.
Like now you can work out everything for yourself, because you had me telling you 100 times, like this, that, do this, do that. That's why this, that's why this. And you kept asking questions all the time. I've trained with hundreds of different people, and probably a good dozen or more, like very closely, been in my training sessions, and so most of them still have no idea about any of the knowledge that you now have, because you asked questions where other people didn't ask questions. They just went okay and done it, which was fine. Like they now can't think for themselves. So I would hire somebody or train with somebody more experienced, or have some way of doing that. And with video technology, you can just record yourself and send it to a coach. Like they don't even have to be there physically.
That's true. You can there's a couple of good apps that will record your bill. Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be.
I coach. What is it? Coach Me.
Well, I don't know about any of them, but I would send it to like you don't have to get personal training really expensive every single session. I just mean, get somebody to look at your form, get them to help you program it, get them to understand where you're breaking down and why. Probably ask somebody who's experienced enough at the gym that you go to, or if you train at home, just record yourself and send it to me. I'll look at it for you. We've got the time. Send it into this podcast and we'll review it. It's fine.
That's a great shout. If you send it to media, we'll bring it up at the bottom, but media at TheValhallaWay, and we'll look at techniques and see if there's anything to call out from a perspective.
Well, I think that's the way to go. Like once you get to a certain point, you either need to be able to work out the knowledge for yourself, or you need help. For somebody to teach you everything, and then you can work it out for yourself. And you always need help. Like I would need help. I would still use a coach. I would still get things looked at. Like I still want somebody cueing me on form. Of course you do.
Yeah, well, absolutely. That's why even England players have Eddie Jones, you know, and there's a strength and conditioning coach there. And we've all seen the videos of Jack Noel he's got two 60-kilo dumbbells. He lines on a flat bench. He puts his feet up, so his feet are not on the floor, and he's bench pressing them. And
we've all seen LeBron James do a squat horribly badly. He's one man who needs some coaching.
He definitely needs a coaching.
Not in basketball, but in squatting.
In squatting. He definitely can afford the best.
I think so. But it's not going to be that much of an expense to get one or two, or just ask somebody. Like there's online.
I mean, we'll do it for free. We'll just, as long as you're happy with, we could do a technical breakdown on here, and maybe other people can benefit from it if you're not shy with your videos being shown. Not a problem.
We do that. So that's the way I would go with that. You can do something like Westside Barbell, move on to that kind of program by the book. Not endorsed.
Certainly.
Louis Simmons.
You
listening?
No, we're not. Absolutely. Do we look like we're endorsed by Louis Simmons? We'd at least be this big, super strong. I'd have some trophies at the back if I was working with Louis Simmons. So I think Westside is good. I quite like Jay DeFranco's Westside for Skinny Bastard program. I really like that, because that's got that. If you've done it long enough, if you've been training long enough, you're probably 6 months is probably the bare minimum, where you have a good idea what your rate RPE is, because that's kind of where that program gets to. That's that hybrid. I think before you get a coach, maybe give this a go.
I was meaning up post like 2 years.
Okay, fine. Okay,
years, something like that. You can bench your own body weight, you can deadlift and squat 2 times your own body weight, and now where do I go?
Yeah, for sure.
Get a coach. Get somebody to look at your exercises. Get somebody to break down your form. Get somebody to look at your programming. And by that point, you've almost certainly got a bunch of injuries that you need to work around as well.
Absolutely.
But you can do that. And if anybody wants to take me up on my adaptation of squat. Have you read Squat Every Day, Matt Perryman? I'm
Yeah.
going to send you this. You can get
Yeah,
you get
I'll read it.
Yeah, I think it's like £4 or something he sells it for. It's like ridiculous price.
Yeah.
It's basically like an extended blog, though. I think is so he didn't want to charge a lot for it. But because there's Jeff. I know I always say his name wrong. Jeff Bezos. He's not Jeff Bezos because that's
yeah, I said that last time, Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, but it's like Bezos or Jeff Bezos, something like that. Anyway, he coaches Olympic lifting guys,
Okay.
but he gets them to squat 1 rep max every single day.
Yeah, yeah.
And he has multiple people squatting over like 400 kilos, like without, and they like, they don't get amped up about it. Nobody's screaming and shouting. It's like an average day. Like,
They just get under the bar and squat.
Yeah, I just squat 350 kilos every day, weighing 90 kilos. Yeah.
Okay, as you do.
But then Matt Perryman, he's not like a professional athlete or anything like that necessarily. He's just a big enthusiast, and he tries his whole squat every day. And he had a similar experience to me, where you think like you should die, and then actually within a few weeks you feel amazing, and things that hurt before suddenly stop hurting. Injuries seem to go away rather than getting more.
Okay.
He said after about 6 months there was a bit of a dark. He's called it the dark ages or something like that. The dark period. It was a good month where it was like, I think this is wrong now.
He's changed his mind.
Yeah, and then he said, but he went through that period and then came out the other side and then went back to actually this is amazing.
Okay, fine.
So I still like the idea, and I'm still going to try and experiment with once I'm building my own squat rack. I've got all the wood, can't really
Nice.
out, so I can build it myself, because apparently you can't buy anything here to do weightlifting.
Buff dudes have a very good video on how to build your own squat rack with wood. So take a look at that.
I've seen that actually.
Yeah, it's quite good.
He's got an iframe for the floor. And then he's got but anyway, yeah. So
I can't remember, but yeah. I'll link it in.
I'm going to try, because why not? I've hurt myself enough.
Yeah. You'll definitely hurt yourself building the squat rack, not using it.
Certainly. But I'm going to try doing squat, bench, deadlift, and ideally pull-ups, but I haven't really got a good place to do pull-ups, and especially not weighted ones or anything like that. So it'll probably be some sort of row instead.
Can you not hook it in that door behind you?
Yeah, possibly. But anyway, we'll see. So something for back, right?
Yeah.
Like those 4 exercises, and I'm going to do a set of more than 50, a set of more than 30, or around 25, 30 reps, something like that. A set of 12 to 15, set of 8 to 12, set of 4 to 6, set of 1 to 3. Or a set of 3, and then kind of building up to 1 rep max. To do that, or I might cut out one of those sets. I want to get there within like 6 sets. I want to be at, or 7 sets. I want to be at the 1 rep, so that I can potentially do another 1 rep, depending on how that one went.
Okay.
Possibly even 3 by the time this has been going for a while, and do that on all 4 exercises, and then obviously do abs and obliques, like some sort of core thing. Otherwise, there's just nothing done for the core, and just all the limbs will be very strong, and the core will snap in half. Something for. We'll probably just use it as an activation thing and do it at the beginning.
Sure. Yeah.
Or something like that. I want to try that and see, like, can I do it for a year and see what happens?
Yeah.
See where I get to. Like when I went back from last time I slipped a disc, I think I went in and I could squat like, I think I want to say 70 kilos or 75 kilos or something, not very good. And then within about a month, that was about 85 kilos. And that was just obviously just getting back into the training. So it's like nothing. But then within 3 months, I'd taken that to 110 kilos, just squatting every day. I was pretty pleased with that. That is obviously not some ridiculous weight. I'm not saying, squat 200 kilos now.
No, coming from a bad back. Yeah.
Yeah. And most importantly, I felt good. I didn't feel like I was dying. My back felt significantly better. In fact, it's the only time it's felt better.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, I spent a whole year doing swimming and yoga because people were like, don't lift, you'll fix your back better doing like yoga and swimming and all these other things. That made me feel worse. Don't ever do that. Don't stop lifting. Like, it's the only thing that's ever made me feel better is lifting.
Yeah.
And it seems to be the heavier I lift and more frequently, the better I feel.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. Like guys that have they like tear the muscle off the bone or have to go surgery, and they'll come back and they'll go, yeah, I could barely squat my body weight.
Yeah.
But that's what they do, and they kind of stick to that, obviously without making the injury worse. But you get these freaks that do this, and then 6 months later they're like, yeah, 6 months later I broke my squat PR and squatted 300 kilos.
Yeah.
What? 6 months ago you tore your quad off the bone.
Yeah.
And
well, I think it depends on your recovery rate. Not recovery rate, but like how long you're out and how much you were training before. Like if you could squat 300 kilos and then you tear a quad and it takes you 6 months to recover, but you spent 10 years lifting prior to that.
Yeah.
You have a lot of memory in what you've done.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, these guys were like lifting maybe 250 or 280 before. You know, this wasn't I used to do 120 kilos and then I tore my quad and then I'd squatted 300 kilos. Like that didn't happen. That is not where this went.
It's because people who see, like people like me, I'm gonna say, where you end up with years of like you can't do it. That's I think you end up in a slightly different territory.
Yeah. Okay.
You've got to be a bit more, I don't know. I think you go through phases. I'm in the phase of, well, screw it, nothing can make it worse.
Yeah, I'm not in that phase. I'm in absolutely, my 100% priority right now is I'm not tweaking anymore. I'm not tweaking it. There is no injury. If something doesn't feel right, I'm just going to put it down. I'm not doing another set because I want to be able to come back next week and train it again, and next week and train again. And touch wood, so far that has worked well for me. My lifts are progressing, my strength's progressing. I'm getting bigger. I'm getting leaner as well. It's kind of working out for me because I've been able to train consistently. Yeah. And I know I'm one of those, I have to train consistently and I'll make incredibly fast progress. As soon as I don't, I'll make incredibly fast, like I'll go backwards just as quickly, if not quicker. So I'm one of those. I'm not one of those that barely moves. I'm one of those that can move very fast either way.
Yeah. It's, I think the rate of progress for like if you're just consistent enough, like how do you get strong? Lift 3 to 5 times a week for 10 years and then you tell me if you're not strong because you've done something seriously wrong. Follow any of these kind of online programs, follow kind of judgment calls and just live consistently enough long enough. You'll get there. But that was the other thing about this like squatting every day type of thing that was quite nice, because if I did feel a bit like, oh, I'm not sure today, I just went home. It was like, well, screw it, I'll go home today then. Like my one rep max today was 55 kilos. That's fine. And go home because I'm coming back tomorrow. It doesn't really matter. You didn't feel like you were building up to this like Tuesday night of squat night and I've got to get my PR and I really want to progress. And there was like no pressure on it because it was like, well, I'm just going to come back tomorrow and perhaps I'll come back twice tomorrow. Like sometimes you go in the morning, go again in the evening. Like type of thing. Like you read this thing from Matt Perryman, it's like you just kind of it doesn't really matter. It's just another day type of thing.
That makes sense.
So you can have a lot more of that, like, actually, I don't feel very good. And I quite like that element because when you are recovering from injury, there are days where you're like, actually, I really probably shouldn't lift now. And if that's like your only session on X, Y, and Z, that's your favorite thing to do, then you're like pissed about it and you might push yourself and go beyond what you should be doing. And so I quite liked it for that. I'm not going to sit here and recommend doing that for anyone because I think it's probably a ridiculous idea. But I do think it's something to experiment with because a lot of Olympic weightlifters do a 1 rep max on snatch, clean and jerk and front squat every single day. And
I get, but then there's a lot of technique refinement element there.
Yeah, there is. It's way more. It's way less of like a grindy type.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean.
You either get it or you don't a lot.
Yeah.
Thing. And so it is different, but I'm going to try. Why not?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll caveat that with that advice probably is reserved for the intermediate to advanced lifters. And
I wouldn't use it at all. I would not recommend this in any way, shape, or form. But if you are interested in trying it out, please do contact me.
Yeah.
Because I'm really interested in programming it, and and seeing how it goes for
sharing.
myself. And yeah, I'd love to get an experiment group of some people together and try it out.
Yeah.
Like a good 12 months of consistently like doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's many benefits to each one of those rep ranges. Is kind of the point.
Yeah.
Why I built it. It's all like squat every day. It was like get to your 1 rep max as soon as quick, basically as in a few sets as possible, and then you do your 1 rep, and then you might do that a couple more 1 reps.
Yeah.
Depending on how you feel, and then you'll do 2 to 5 back off sets of doubles or triples, and that's your session.
Okay, makes sense.
But rather than having all of that on the back end of the 1 rep, like I might do 1 rep and then do 1 more, potentially 3, I guess, but something like that. Like see, like is it like let's say you get to 100 kilos, you're like, actually I feel good today, let's try 102, and you do another 1 rep. So sure. Do that. Rather than having all the stuff in the back end, I want to do all the stuff in the front end to build up volume. There's a lot to be said for Matt Wenning does all his Wenning warm-ups where he's doing 4 sets of 25 reps or more on some sort of superset as his warm-up.
Okay.
And he looks like, if he's doing a bench thing, it'll probably be triceps and lats that he'll do that with. And he's like, they're the things that I need to build. They're the thing to put volume into. And he's like, after a while, you just in fact, recently he changed to doing it as like 4 sets of 50 because he's so conditioned to doing 4 sets of 25.
4 sets of 25, yeah.
So he's like, even now, like it's like it's ridiculous. You think most people are like dead by the end of that. Like that was the workout.
Yeah.
Like,
that sounds like
talking about. I'm not even begun warming up yet.
This is the primer to the warm up to the bench press.
Because there's quite a lot of research on volume matters the most, and then there's a lot. If you volume, intensity, and frequency, and there's probably enough evidence on each one of them to say it's the most important.
Yeah,
it's a bit ridiculous. So like, what is it? So if I do all of those sets with all of those reps every single day, I'm maximizing volume, intensity, and frequency.
Yeah, you're redlining the car to see what happens. Yeah, fine.
I'm just going to keep my mental. The thing I'm really wanting to test is how much of this can you do staying calm, rather than getting amped up and getting burnt out and like getting really stressed. Because I remember doing that before, getting like amped up for stuff, and there was no way I was going to lift another 1 rep max the next day. I was like dead. Like
fine.
It was just never going to happen. But keeping calm and not pushing that like mental state.
Sure.
Tempted me, and you could just turn up every day and do it because it didn't really matter. That like, oh, it's fine type attitude. And so that's really the experiment. Like, can you do something that people say you can't do just because in your mind you say it's fine? Like how you
that's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. It's probably worth adding that both you and I have a completely unrelated day job, and therefore if you want to send in your details or want to be part of Tom's group here, it's entirely free. There is no catch-all, there is no catch-22, there's no hidden terms. It's just something we're interested in doing, just like we are putting out these podcasts and sharing our knowledge. Absolutely. So I'll get the address to come up on the screen, and then if anyone's interested, I'll let you know.
It'll be good.
Cool. I think that's probably a good place to wrap this one up. Obviously you've got some really good subtopics and sidebars to pick up on the third one. But if you've got any questions, got any comments, or what are your thoughts around the off-season, in-season training? Has your coach given you advice that is additional or counter to what we've said? Share, comment below, and let's expand that knowledge and try and improve that grassroots game, which is essentially the purpose of the podcast. But until then, enjoy, train hard, and we'll see you on the third podcast. See ya.
Thanks all. Bye-bye.